we do have to, I don't swear in public very well, but we have to Trump. Please don't tell my children that I just did that.
A lover and a fighter, apparently. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, that is the current state of the Democrat Party. Downsizing the government has them down bad.
But remember, while Democrats spend their days ranting and raving about a wrecking ball coming for their kingdom of waste, Trump's DOGE is working to free up money for, get this, people who actually need it.
Yeah, that's right. Like in North Carolina, where Hurricane Helene victims are still being forced to live in neglect.
This idea that if a massive natural disaster destroys your city, that there are all of these checks and balances in place to help you, that's just not true. It's so messed up. There's so much bureaucracy in the mix that you're going to be homeless. And that's just unacceptable.
My kids see it on our way to school every day. We drive past 3 bridges that are sitting in the river that have not been touched. And the neighborhood across from mine is driving 4-wheelers through the woods to get their kids to school. You're not going to make anyone feel better in Western North Carolina by saying there's a giant pot of money for illegal immigrants, but not for you.
A lot to get to here. Let's bring in California Congressman Tom McClintock and Texas Congressman Chip Roy. Great to have you both with us this evening. You both are on the House Budget Committee. So, Congressman McClintock, I'll start with you because we're talking about DOGE, we're talking about waste, we're talking about the Democrats coining this a constitutional crisis. But in that same conversation just a little bit ago, Elon Musk said this. He said, if the people cannot vote and have their will be decided by their elected representatives in the form of the president and the Senate in the House, then we don't live in a democracy. We live in a bureaucracy. And that's kind of like what the last 4 years felt like. Your thoughts on how they're approaching cutting waste, looking under the hood, and if the Democrats weren't scared, I don't see why they wouldn't let them look.
Well, this isn't exactly complicated. A new boss takes over, he brings in his accountant, the accountant calls in the staff and says, folks, I need to see your expense account receipts. And the staff goes berserk. Now, what does that tell you has been going on? In my experience, the most closely guarded secrets in the federal government are not those that are marked top secret. They're the ones that are considered to be embarrassing. And that is the mortal sin of Elon Musk. He is embarrassing the Democrats, and that's why you see this fusillade of personal abuse being hurled at him. And he's absolutely right. A democracy requires that the executive, the people who work in the executive branch are not independent of the executive. They are directly under the executive's authority because it is the executive, the president, who's actually elected. No one else is. If you have an independent bureaucracy, that's a bureaucracy independent of the American people, and that's the very definition of tyranny.
Now, Congressman Roy, great to have you here. You know a thing or two about the Constitution, right? And they say constitutional crisis, but yet, to the congressman's point, the people elect and delegate the power to the President of the United States, and the executive gets to make those decisions. Where's the constitutional crisis?
Yeah, Democrats are howling and using the phrase constitutional crisis. And where were they when the Biden administration was blatantly disregarding the law and allowing illegals to flow into our country, specifically saying that ICE was not going to be empowered to use the resources that we had appropriated to make sure that our streets were safe? They were nowhere to be found. Now you have the President of the United States, who's going through as the chief executive and a unitary executive, as Tom just described, doing his job to ensure that tax dollars are going where they're supposed to go. And by the way, are in concert with the very principles he ran upon. And so now I've got friends of mine who have gone back to the administration, and they've gone back to their desk where they were 4 years ago, and they literally have found phone numbers in the speed dial that are the same, because Democrats didn't even bother to show up over the last 4 years to these desks. It has been a complete and abject failure, and DOGE is identifying and exposing much of what Tom and I and a lot of my colleagues have known and been trying to put forward, and now we're getting even more information. The president is doing his job as the chief executive, and these judges that are trying to interfere and trying to say that he doesn't have the constitutional authority to do this are plainly wrong. He does have the constitutional authority to ensure that these dollars are being administered properly. And that, I think, is going to be made clear in coming decisions in the courts, I hope.
Oh, absolutely. They're definitely trying to stall it, but in some ways, I actually think there will be a positive outcome in that it will set precedent moving forward if you try to look at the glass half full. But I want to move on to this as well, because Trump has a lofty agenda. He's got a lot to get to. You've got two chambers of Congress that have two reconciliation plans, and the clock is ticking, and the American people are waiting. Lindsey Graham released his Senate border bill blueprint as your colleagues eye a two-bill approach, but Speaker Mike Johnson is sticking to his guns today on one big bill. Listen to this.
I'm afraid it's a non-starter over here, and I've expressed that to him. What I've been very clear about is that we are moving towards a one-bill reconciliation strategy in the House because it's the only way, I think, to achieve all of the important objectives that we have before us.
Congressman McClintock, I'll come back to you for a response on this, how you think it's going to play out. I mean, both agendas are really important, securing our southern border, but also getting that economic and tax agenda in place. Some economists and market participants say you can't wait until August to do the tax part of this. We have to do it now.
No, I agree with that completely. Now, all tax cuts are not created equal. There are some that are extremely stimulative, like the marginal tax rates, the pass-through provisions. Those are absolutely top priority. But we also have to understand that this is not happening in a vacuum. The only reason our country is afloat right now is because capital markets continue to loan us money. Our entire discretionary spending is now borrowed. So we not only have to pass a budget resolution, we have to pass a budget resolution that assures those capital markets that we are determined to get our deficit back under control.
Yeah.
That's going to require prioritizing. It's going to require all of us to, as Benjamin Franklin once counseled the Constitutional Convention, doubt a little of our own infallibility.
Congressman Roy, on this reconciliation bill, and I get it that, to the congressman's point, delays can be destructive. When you look at the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, for example, on the revenue side, 2 years it paid for itself. If we get a reconciliation bill in place, then the American people can see the results, and they can see the successful results, and we don't have to deal with negotiating with Democrats. Isn't that, or shouldn't that be the approach for the Republican House, not to negotiate a thing with Democrats?
Well, absolutely. We should be doing something as Republicans to deliver on the Trump agenda. And I just want to be very clear that one of the reasons why there even is a two-bill approach is because of the importance of ensuring that our border is actually secured. Right now, Tom Homan is telling us he's running out of bed capacity, running out of funds for ICE. So that was why there was an effort to say, hey, let's move something quickly. And I think that's what the Senate is trying to do. But whether it's one bill or two bill, here is the bottom line. If we do not cut spending, then we are going to be saddling our children and grandchildren with the heavy taxation of inflation and the failure on our part to do our part to balance the budget. So for me, we talk about income tax cuts and we talk about other tax cuts, but we don't talk enough about the inflation tax cut that we must put in place by doing our part to cut spending. So whatever we do as a party, we need to deliver. President Trump stood in the dome right behind me in his inaugural speech, and he talked about getting rid of inflation by getting rid of the excessive spending. Yeah. I think we should deliver on that side by side with the tax restraint and to make sure we deliver on the border.
Congressman, we appreciate you both so much. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.